We're counting down 30 forgotten memories of school life in the 1950s America, a time when children walked to schoolhouses through the frost, dipped pens in inkwells, and ducked beneath their desks at the wail of a siren. From the sweet chemical smell of fresh mimeograph ink to the crack of a paddle behind the principal's door, each memory tells the story of a country caught between old traditions and a nervous new atomic age. Expect classroom rituals your grandchildren wouldn't recognize, playground games won and lost over a nickel, and lessons drilled in by teachers who ruled with chalk dust and iron patience. Which vanished memory tops the list? Let's begin our countdown with number 30. Number 30, the metal lunchbox. Every morning began with the rattle of a tin lunchbox swinging from a small hand. By the mid-1950s, lithographed steel boxes cost around $2, their lids stamped with cowboys, rockets, and television heroes. Inside, a matching thermos kept milk cold or soup warm, its fragile glass liner prone to shattering the moment it hit the blacktop. Mothers packed bologna on white bread, a waxed paper apple, and maybe a few pennies for milk money. Children traded sandwiches at long tables, comparing whose box was newest and least dented. The clasp shut with a satisfying snap. By June, every box was scratched and battered. A badge of a year survived. For a generation, that little metal box was a first prized possession. Number 29, milk in glass bottles. Mid-morning meant the milk break, and the memory of it clings like the cream at the top of the bottle. Small half-pint glass bottles, later waxed cardboard cartons, arrived in wire crates rattled down the hallway by a lucky pair of milk monitors. For 2 or 3 cents, a child could buy cold, whole milk, sometimes chocolate, on a good day. The foil cap peeled back with a satisfying pop, and the cream had to be shaken down first. On winter mornings, bottles left near the door froze and pushed the caps up on little towers of ice. The milk monitor job was coveted, a small position of authority. That daily crate, clinking through the corridor, marked the rhythm of the school morning. Number 28, clapping the chalkboard erasers. No chore carried more strange honor than being sent outside to clap the erasers. Chosen students carried a stack of felt blackboard erasers to the schoolyard wall and beat them together in great gray clouds that hung in the afternoon light. Chalk dust settled on sleeves and hair and up young noses, and everyone came back sneezing and proud. It was a reward and an escape, a few minutes of freedom in the fresh air while classmates stayed at their desks. Ghostly white handprints marked the brick wall where generations had done the same. Teachers relied on it since a caked eraser only smeared the board. That small, dusty ritual, chosen like a prize, is a memory nearly every classroom child of the era still carries. Number 27, marbles at recess. When the recess bell rang, boys dropped to their knees in the dirt, and the marble games began. A shooter, a taw, was thumbed across a circle scratched in the ground, and the goal was to knock rivals' marbles out and keep them. Playing for keeps meant real stakes, and a prized Aggie or a swirled cat's eye could change hands in an instant. Boys carried their winnings in cloth drawstring bags that clacked in their pockets all day. A common marble cost a penny, a fancy one a nickel, and a fat sack of them was true schoolyard wealth. Skinned knuckles and dirty knees were the price of the game. When the bell called them back inside, the marbles vanished into pockets until tomorrow. Number 26, jacks, hopscotch, and jump rope. While the boys shot marbles, the girls ruled another corner of the yard. A rubber ball and 10 metal jacks was all it took, bouncing and scooping in a rhythm that grew faster with every round. Nearby, hopscotch grids were chalked onto the sidewalk, and a tossed stone or bottle cap decided where you hopped. Jump ropes turned in blurs, while children chanted rhymes passed down from older sisters, timing their feet to the slap of the rope on pavement. Double Dutch demanded nerve and perfect timing. None of it cost more than a few cents, yet it filled every recess. Those chants and chalk squares are a soundtrack the era never forgot, carried home in scuffed shoes and sunburned cheeks. Number 25. The mimeograph machine. Ask anyone who went to school in the 1950s about the ditto machine, and the first thing they remember is the smell. Fresh copies came off the mimeograph in cool purple ink, and children pressed the pages to their faces to breathe in that sweet chemical scent before the teacher could stop them. The pages were run off by hand on a crank drum, and the print was a soft violet that faded at the edges. A worksheet or a spelling test arrived still slightly damp, the ink almost glowing. Teachers guarded the machine and its messy fluid jealously. That purple ink and its heady aroma is one of the most vivid and universal memories of mid-century school, a scent that instantly carries grown adults back to their desks. Number 24. Wooden desks and carved initials. The classroom desk of the 1950s was a heavy affair of cast iron and worn wood, the seat often bolted to the desk behind it in a long connected row. A hinged lid lifted to reveal a cluttered cave of books, pencils, and forgotten notes. In the top right corner sat a round hole, the inkwell, a holdover from the days of dip pens. Decades of restless students had carved their initials into the wood, and a bored child could trace the names of those who sat there a generation before. The desks smelled of pencil shavings and old varnish. Passed down for years without replacement, each one held the quiet history of every child who had ever squirmed through a long afternoon at it. Number 23. Inkwells and the dip pen. For younger students in the early part of the decade, writing still meant a wooden-handled pen with a steel nib dipped again and again into the desk's inkwell. It was a messy, unforgiving skill. Too much ink meant blots that ruined the page. Too little meant a scratchy, broken line. Blotting paper was pressed over every word, and stained fingers were the mark of a school child. Legend and mischief both surrounded the inkwell, that little glass pot filled by a monitor each morning. Ballpoint pens were creeping in, cheaper and cleaner every year, and by the decade's end, the nib was fading fast. But for a few years yet, learning to write meant learning to control the flow of ink from a dipped steel point. Number 22. Penmanship and the Palmer method. Handwriting was not a casual matter. It was a subject with rules, drills, and daily practice. The Palmer method reigned, teaching a smooth, flowing cursive powered by the whole arm rather than the fingers. Children filled endless rows with looping ovals and slanted push and pull motions, the same shapes over and over, until the motion became automatic. Teachers walked the aisles correcting posture and grip, and a child who wrote well earned a Palmer certificate to bring home proudly. Neatness was next to godliness, and a sloppy page could be torn up and begun again. That patient, muscle-deep training produced a generation whose graceful handwriting still amazes their grandchildren today, a lost art drilled into small hands, one oval at a time. Number 21. The slide rule. Long before pocket calculators, the slide rule was the tool of every serious math and science student. This slender ruler with a sliding centerpiece and a clear cursor let students multiply, divide, and find square roots by aligning printed scales. Learning to read it was a rite of passage, demanding you keep track of the decimal point in your head. A good bamboo or metal model came in a leather case clipped to a belt, worn almost like a badge of intelligence. Engineers and scientists carried them everywhere, and students who mastered them felt they held real power in their hands. The slide rule launched a generation toward the space age, only to vanish almost overnight when the electronic calculator arrived a couple of decades later. Number 20. Film strips and the projector. Few announcements thrilled a classroom like the teacher wheeling in the projector cart. The shades came down, the room went dark, and a film strip clicked frame by frame onto the pull-down screen. Each advance was cued by a beep on an accompanying record or the teacher's own hand on the knob. The narrator's voice droned through history, science, or safety, while the projector's fan hummed and its bulb warmed the dusty air. Being chosen to run the projector, to turn the knob at each beep, was a genuine honor. The images were grainy and the color faded, but the novelty of moving pictures in the classroom felt like magic. That dark room and clicking projector remain a cherished, sleepy memory of the era. Number 19. The Spelling Bee. Spelling was taken seriously, and nothing tested it like the class spelling bee. Children lined up along the wall as the teacher called out word after word, and one wrong letter sent you back to your seat in stinging silence. The tension mounted as the line thinned to the last few standing, the strongest spellers trading harder and harder words. A classroom champion advanced to compete against other schools, and the district and national bees crowned true young celebrities. Words were studied at the kitchen table for weeks, parents quizzing children over supper. Standing up and spelling correctly under every eye in the room built nerve as much as vocabulary. That mix of pride and dread is a memory anyone who ever stood in that line still recalls. Number 18. Show and Tell. For the youngest grades, few mornings sparkled like show and tell. One by one, children carried something precious from home to the front of the room. A seashell from a summer trip, a father's war medal, a new puppy in a shoebox, a rock that looked like it held gold. The child spoke, the class asked questions, and for a few shining minutes, even the shyest student held the floor. It taught small children to stand and speak, to listen, and to share a piece of their home life with the class. Teachers gently coaxed the quiet ones along. That simple ritual, a treasure and a story, is remembered warmly by everyone who once stood clutching their prize before a room of wide eyes. Number 17. The Handbell. Before electric buzzers wired every hallway, the school day was ruled by a bell rung by a human hand. The principal, or a chosen student, swung a heavy brass bell on the front steps, and its bright clang carried across the yard to summon children from their games. In rural schools, a rope pulled the bell in the tower overhead, tolling the start and end of lessons. The sound meant everything: time to line up, time to file in, time to run home. Being trusted to ring the bell was a coveted duty. That clear metal ring, echoing over the playground, ordered the whole rhythm of the day, and its sound is fixed forever in the memory of those who came running at its call. Number 16. The Cloakroom. Just inside the classroom door, or in a narrow room of its own, hung the row of hooks and shelves known as the cloakroom. Here children shed dripping coats, galoshes, mittens, and lunch pails before the day began. In winter it smelled of wet wool and damp rubber, and a forest of soggy coats steamed as they dried. It was also a place of secrets, where whispered conversations and small mischief happened out of the teacher's sight, and where a child sent to fetch a book might dawdle a delicious extra minute. Losing a mitten there was a small tragedy. The cloakroom was the threshold between the cold world outside and the warm classroom within, and its wet wool smell is unforgettable. Number 15, the report card. 4 times a year came the small folded card that could make or break a child's week. Grades were written by hand in the teacher's own ink, sometimes accompanied by pointed comments on conduct, effort, and that dreaded line, "does not work to potential." The card had to be carried home, signed by a parent, and returned, and there was no hiding it or losing it without consequence. A row of good marks meant a proud supper. A poor one meant a long talk at the kitchen table. Beyond letter grade sat marks for neatness, punctuality, and plays well with others. That folded card, walked home with a knot in the stomach, holds a weight in memory far greater than its small size. Number 14, diagramming sentences. Grammar in the 1950s was a hands-on affair, and its centerpiece was the sentence diagram. Children learned to break a sentence into a skeleton of lines, the subject and verb on the main horizontal bar, modifiers dangling below on slanted branches. It turned language into something almost mathematical, a puzzle to be mapped on the blackboard in chalk. Some students loved the neat logic of it. Others were baffled by the tangle of lines. Either way, everyone learned exactly how a sentence was built. The teacher would call a student to the board to diagram a tricky example while the class watched and waited to pounce on a mistake. Rarely taught today, sentence diagramming was once a cornerstone of every English class and a shared memory of chalk and lines. Number 13, the potbelly stove and clanking radiators. Heat in a 1950s school was a physical presence you could hear and smell. Older rural schools warmed a single room with a black potbelly stove, and the children nearest it roasted, while those by the door shivered in their coats. In town, cast iron radiators hissed and clanked and knocked as steam rose through them, a percussion that filled the quiet room. Mittens and wet socks were laid across the warm pipes to dry, and the smell of steaming wool hung in the air. The banging pipes could startle a daydreamer half out of his seat. That uneven, clanking, coal-tinged warmth is a sensory memory of winter school days that no thermostat-controlled classroom could ever reproduce. Number 12, home economics and shop class. By the older grades, the school day split along a clear line. Girls filed into home economics, where they learned to sew a hem, iron a shirt, set a proper table, and bake from scratch under a stern teacher's eye. Boys headed to the shop, a room smelling of sawdust and machine oil, where they cut, sanded, and joined wood into birdhouses, bookends, and lamps. Each side prepared children for the roles the era expected of them. A finished project carried home, a sewn apron or a wooden shelf, was a source of enormous pride. The clatter of sewing machines on one side of the building and the whine of the bandsaw on the other are memories bound tightly to that time. Number 11, the paddle, discipline. In the 1950s, classroom was firm and often physical, and the memory still stings. A wooden paddle, sometimes drilled with holes and given a name, hung in plain view as a warning to every restless child. A ruler could wrap knuckles, and a trip to the principal's office was dreaded above almost anything. Standing in the corner, writing lines on the board 100 times over, or wearing the shame of a scolding were daily realities. Parents, as a rule, backed the teacher without question, so there was little comfort waiting at home. It was a stricter world, and children learned to sit still and mind their manners early. That climate of firm authority is a defining and sobering memory of the era's schoolhouse. Number 10, the school's safety patrol. Long before crossing guards were adults in vests, the job belonged to the students themselves. Chosen sixth graders wore a white canvas belt looped over the shoulder and around the waist, and some carried a badge or a small handheld stop sign. They stood at the corners near the school, holding back their classmates until the way was clear, then waving them across with real authority. It was a position of genuine trust and pride, and the belt was worn like a mark of rank. Rain or shine, the patrol was at its post before and after school. That white belt and the responsibility it carried made small children feel 10 feet tall, and it remains a fondly remembered honor of the age. Number 9, the sock hop. When the school day ended and a Friday night came around, the gymnasium transformed into a dance floor. Students slipped off their shoes to protect the polished wood and danced in their socks to records spun on a portable player, giving the sock hop its name. The jukebox sound of early rock and roll filled the gym, and couples jitterbugged while chaperones watched from the folding chairs along the wall. Crepe paper streamers and a punch bowl were all the decoration needed. Boys stood on one side gathering nerve, girls on the other, until the music pulled them together. Those first nervous dances in stocking feet under the gym lights are among the sweetest and most romantic memories of school life in the 1950s. Number 8, Polio Vaccine Day. Few memories carry the weight of the day the polio vaccine came to school. For years, polio had terrified parents every summer, closing pools and filling wards with iron lungs. When Jonas Salk's vaccine was proven safe in 1955, and later the sugar cube oral version arrived, schools became the front line of the fight. Children lined up in the gymnasium, some to receive a shot, others to swallow a sugar cube soaked in the vaccine, a far easier thing to face. Parents wept with relief. It was one of the great public health triumphs of the century, carried out class by class in ordinary schools. That orderly line and the fear it finally ended is a memory tied to a genuine turning point in American life. Number 7. Duck and cover drills. No memory captures the anxious mood of the era like the atomic drill. At the sudden wail of a siren or the sharp command of the teacher, children dove beneath their wooden desks, curled their heads down, and clasped their hands over their necks. They practiced this again and again, told it would shield them from the flash of an atomic bomb. A cartoon turtle named Bert taught the routine, and children knew the phrase by heart, duck and cover. Some schools handed out metal dog tags so bodies could be identified. Beneath the ordinary lessons ran a current of real fear about the world outside. That image of a whole class crouched under their desks is the haunting emblem of growing up in the atomic 1950s. Number 6. The Valentine's Box. Come February, the classroom filled with paper hearts and quiet anxiety. Children decorated shoe boxes with red construction paper, lace doilies, and a slot cut in the top, then set them on their desks to await cards. Store-bought Valentines came in punch-out sheets, and the rule was often that everyone must give one to everyone, so no child was left out. Still, the size of the card and who signed it carried enormous meaning to a small heart. A cupcake, a candy heart with a printed message, and a paper box stuffed with Valentines made the day feel like magic. That mix of sugar, glue, and tender hope is a memory of childhood affection that anyone who lined up their little box remembers dearly. Number 5. Class Picture Day. Once a year, everyone arrived scrubbed and combed for the school photographer. Mothers pressed shirts and tugged cowlicks into place, and the whole class filed to the gym or the front steps to be arranged tallest in back, shortest in front. The photographer coaxed a smile, the flash popped, and weeks later the prints came home in an envelope to be cut apart and mailed to relatives. The individual portrait, the gap-toothed grin frozen forever, ended up on the mantel and in every grandmother's wallet. Trading small, wallet-sized photos with friends was its own ritual. Those stiff, formal, slightly awkward class pictures became the treasured record of a childhood, and flipping through them now returns whole classrooms of faces to life. Number 4. The Cafeteria Hot Lunch. By the 1950s, the federal lunch program had put a hot meal within reach of nearly every school child, and the cafeteria became the noisy heart of the school day. Students filed through the line with metal or partitioned trays, and lunch ladies in aprons and hairnets ladled out the day's offering, often for around a quarter. Fish sticks on Friday, sloppy joes, meatloaf, mashed potatoes with a well of gravy, and a carton of milk filled the trays. A square of cake or a scoop of canned peaches waited at the end. The clatter of trays and the roar of 100 voices under high ceilings defined the middle of the day. That standard issue hot lunch feeds a warm nostalgia all its own. Number 3. Dick and Jane. For millions of American children, reading itself began with two names, Dick and Jane. The primers followed a cheerful brother and sister, their little sister Sally, the dog Spot, and the cat Puff, through simple, repeated sentences. See Spot run? Run, Spot, run. The controlled vocabulary and bright illustrations of a tidy suburban world taught a whole generation its first words. Teachers led the class through each page in unison, small fingers tracing under every line. Those characters were as familiar as family, and their sunny, orderly world shaped how children imagined life should look. The very phrase Dick and Jane still summons the feeling of a first reading lesson. For sheer number of childhoods touched, few school memories run deeper than these simple little books. Number 2, the Pledge of Allegiance. Every school morning in America began the same way. At the teacher's word, children rose from their desks, faced the flag in the corner, placed a hand over the heart, and recited the Pledge of Allegiance in one steady, half-mumbled voice. In 1954, the words under God were added, and children learned the new phrasing that has stayed ever since. The flag salute, sometimes followed by a hymn or a reading, opened the day and settled the room for the lessons ahead. It was so routine that few thought about it, yet it framed every single morning of a school childhood. That collective murmur of young voices, hands on hearts before the classroom flag, is one of the most enduring and unmistakable memories of the era. Number 1, the walk to school. And in first place, the memory that frames all the others, the long walk to school. There were few buses in town and no lines of parents in cars, so children set off on foot in every kind of weather, often a mile or more each way. They walked in packs, gathering friends door by door, kicking cans, skipping cracks, and stopping to inspect a frozen puddle or a stray dog. In winter, they trudged through snow with cold ears and wet mittens. In spring, they dawdled and dawdled some more. The walk home was slower still, full of shortcuts, dares, and confessions traded between friends. That daily journey, unsupervised and free, gave children a small kingdom of their own between home and school. More than any lesson, that walk and the freedom of it is the memory a whole generation holds closest. Across all 30 memories, from the rattle of a tin lunchbox to the long walk home, one thing shines through. School in America in the 1950s ran on ritual, discipline, and a freedom children today can scarcely imagine. Some memories, like the duck and cover drill, carry the fear of the age. Others, like the sock hop and the Valentine's box, carry its sweetness. Together, they are the taste, the smell, and the sound of a childhood that has quietly slipped away. If you lived it, or your parents did, share the memory that brought it all back in the comments below.